Now I know we're live. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is DeVaughn. It's my absolute pleasure to serve as Director of the Illinois Department of Central Management Services. And I welcome you to our third annual Women's History Month panel, Women in State Government, Shaping Illinois Through Service, Systems, and Care. I'm going to go off script for just a moment right now. Just about 10 miles from where we're sitting, the world is watching as we celebrate the life of the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Jr., a son of Chicago by way of South Carolina, spending the majority of his life here. Something that we don't really talk about, or is not talked about in his legacy. His mission for liberation was bereft of race, gender, or any other sort of differentiator. It was for all. And when he ran for president in 1988, one of his tenets was gender pay equity. So in this Women's History Month, we always have to acknowledge, certainly we can clap for that. We acknowledge Titans, but also those who have worked for us and in community with us. So with that, I'd like to thank each of you. They know I go off script all the time, so whatevs. But I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be here today, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. I know how busy our schedules are, and I don't take it lightly that you chose to spend part of your day during the 6th day of Women's History Month with us. I can promise you that today's conversation will be meaningful, engaging, and affirming. As we reflect on the current landscape of public service, it's clear that women leaders continue to play a critical role in shaping how government shows up for the people it serves. Across Illinois, women are leading complex systems, navigating change, and making decisions that directly impact families, communities, and future generations. The women you'll hear from today are guiding agencies responsible for transportation, infrastructure, health and human services, and early childhood development, areas that quite literally keep our state moving, supported, and thriving. Their leadership reminds us that public service is not only about policy and programs, but about people, access, and accountability. Throughout today's discussion, we'll hear reflections on leadership, journeys, lessons learned, and the responsibility that comes with stewarding public trust during times of both challenge and opportunity. These leaders demonstrate that strong leadership is rooted in collaboration, empathy, and a deep commitment to equity and service. Their stories will invite us to think more deeply about our own roles in state government and how each of us, regardless of title, contributes to us building systems that are more responsive, inclusive, and resilient. I'm also going to go off script here because usually we thank staff at the end. I'm going to thank them at the beginning. I have a bunch of big ideas, and I am not the one who does not even a tenth of the work. So I want to acknowledge Cynthia Johnson, our comms leader. It's a whole list. Hold on. But thank you. we got Mikasa Johnson, who serves as our project manager for the Reparations Commission. Back in the back, we've got Valerie Badillo, who is our assistant deputy of comms, and the most amazing videographers and photographers in the land. We've got Bree Norman and our photographer Jaime here to the left of me. And I'd also like to acknowledge Steve Booth, our deputy chief of staff, who's critical in moving these forward. We got to thank and love on our people in advance because all these people have really big ideas, and then there are people behind the people who do the work. So thank you. I also acknowledge I'm joined by my assistant director, my co-conspirator in progress here at CMS, Andre Williams. Drove up. He surprised me coming up from Springfield. I was like, you didn't have to come. And he's like, I'd be nowhere else. And then I'd also like to acknowledge Dr. Coleman, our chief equity officer and former panelist. And I can't say this because it's other secretaries here, but one of my favorite secretaries, Dulce Quintero from the Department of Human and Health Services. Thank you all. They continue to come back and support. That's how important this work is. So today, we're honored to be joined by an incredible group of leaders. I don't introduce people other than to say their name and titles, and I love to hear how people will introduce themselves. Directly to my left is Cassaundra Rouse, the Executive Director of the Illinois Tollway. Then next to her is Deputy Governor Grace Ho, who serves as the Deputy Governor over Health and Human Services portfolio. Next to her is Secretary Teresa Ramos, who is the inaugural secretary of the Illinois Department of Early Education. I think you are not even a year old as an agency yet. Coming up July 1, right?
It's gonna be 2.
Oh.
But it's a big birthday. I
Oh,
know.
man.
Time
Man.
flies. 16 weeks. 16 weeks.
Time flies when you're hiring people. And then last but not least, the Secretary of the Illinois Department of Transportation, Biagi. So with that, because I'm an old school sorority girl, I mean, we're gonna start with Secretary Biagi since she was a little late. We're gonna start with you and tell us about who you are.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me and this great group of women here today to talk about our experiences, which will all be a little bit different, right? And, I think there's been a lot of work on the kinds of questions that we'll engage with. I think there's like 26 questions. I don't have time for that. But I suspect we'll cover a lot of permutations of what it means to be a woman in leadership, what it means to be in public service and all of that. So I'm grateful to be a part of the conversation. So what am I supposed to do? Who am I? So I'm Biagi. I'm Secretary of Illinois Department of Transportation. And I give you all the stats, but you could look them up yourself. But it's quite a lot of infrastructure across our whole state, 147,000 miles of roadway, 7,000 bridges in the context of 40,000 bridges across the state. We work with rail, runway, roadway, bikeway, trailway, all the ways. And working with, the almost 7,000 cities, towns, and townships and all that across the state. And I've got an incredible team. My colleague Guy Tridgell here runs our comms shop, who's paying attention to what I'm saying in case I step out of line. Okay, so I'm the secretary, and I don't know, did you want us to go into some background?
Yeah, tell us who you are. Tell us whatever you want us to know. We're interested.
Well, I'm an urban planner, and that's different in transportation. Well, planners are looking at all the systems, right? And so there's transportation, housing, economic development, community development. How do all of those ways of working on what we own together in common, which is the public realm, how does that all work together? How do we make choices about what priorities are and what things that we're maybe going to put off? How do we work together to live up to what communities need and want? And then how do we integrate folks into that process? Those are all the questions that planners grapple with. And at the Department of Transportation, we have the opportunity to have those conversations with the communities all over the state and to really press all the levers that we have that do touch all of those categories of things. How do we think about equitable transit-oriented development, right, in housing? How do we think about how we get folks who've been marginalized from conversations about what transportation or quality of life and meaning air quality and the impacts of mobility or lack of it, what do those have to do with communities? So for me as an urban planner to also have the hands on the wheel for an organization that has one of the largest construction programs in the United States. Our DOT's multi-year plan, it's bigger than Texas's, it's bigger than California's, it's bigger than all the Midwest states combined. That's thanks to the governor for putting that on the table. But it means it's a tremendous amount of opportunity to improve people's lives. And that's the game that I've been in a career that's both been in the private sector and in the public sector. I worked in parks and transportation, urban design, all kinds of things. And so it's just a privilege to be here alongside my colleagues and looking forward to the dialogue.
I'm Teresa Ramos. I'm the secretary for the new department that is going to go from a about $21 million agency to a $4 billion agency in 16 weeks. Appreciate all the help from CMS every week on that. I did a panel this morning on Chicago public schools and education. So I come from education. I grew up in Chicago. I went to Chicago public schools down to U of I. I have a sister who's a veteran teacher I talk to every day, who's always in my ear about all the things education, human services. And I am a mom of a almost 6-year-old, will be 6. So I just gave you the context of how I show up in this work in early childhood. It'll show up as I answer some of these questions. I am someone who really believes in collaboration. I come from a background, I was in the governor's office. And I got there because I've done a lot of work in educational and racial equity. And you never know who's paying attention to the work that you're doing that's not in your immediate team. And that's how I got into government service. My parents also in government service, so that's what's led me here.
Hi, everyone. It's so great to see all of you here in the room and to whomever is watching. So I'm the Deputy Governor for Health and Human Services, and that includes 12 state agencies, as well as boards and commissions that comprise our portfolio, from Department of Human Services to HF Healthcare and Family Services, child welfare, housing, human rights, veterans, aging, et cetera, guardianship and advocacy. And, you know, we actually comprise half of the entire state budget for the state of Illinois, which is a testament to the importance of the work that we do on a regular basis. So I joined the governor's office about 2.5 years ago. Prior to that, I was the secretary of the Illinois Department of Human Services, joining this administration in 2019. How did I get here? I didn't even ever imagine in my wildest dreams that I would have this amazing opportunity to work in this administration during such a critical time in our country. My roots are community-based. My path to public service was through community organizing, social services, human services, working in the immigrant and refugee rights community. I'm a child of immigrants, and that is part of who I am, and through the lens that I see the work that I do. I'm excited to talk about equity in all its forms, because it is a thread that I think has been a passion for me, and really has been the motivating force for doing all the work that we do. There's so much to be said about the importance of what we do as public servants. I think we are often the unsung heroes. You are the unsung heroes, and you only see in times of crisis, like COVID, or the new arrivals that were being bused to us, or Operation Midway Blitz, when you really see people turn to government. And I'm so proud of all of the work that this administration has done thus far.
So my name is Cassaundra Rouse, and I'm the Executive Director for the Illinois Tollway. And just a little history on the Tollway. We have 5 toll roads in the Chicagoland area across 12 counties, and that's 294 miles of toll road here in the state. I've been with the Illinois Tollway for 14 years. I've been the Executive Director now for a little bit over 4. And I will tell you, from a transportation perspective, this is passion work. I know that transportation, it just impacts, as I'm sure as you're sitting here listening or in the seats in front of me, it impacts anything and everything we do. And when I think about my pathway to service, as Raven mentioned, right now in this moment, at the House of Hope, we are celebrating the life of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And when I think about my pathway to service, I think about my dad, who Jesse Jackson and my dad were about the same age. They both came from the South. And my dad, you know, migrated up here just around the same time that Jesse Jackson did. And my dad was a big follower and very much so involved in Operation Breadbasket at the time, and then Operation Push. So in my household, as I was growing up, really service was at the forefront of anything and everything. And so I watched my dad, my mom, both educators in Chicago public school system, be of service. And therefore, obviously, that was the tapestry of, you know, who we are and who my brother and I are, and who and what I have also instilled in my children. And I have 4 now adult children, because when I would say children, people think I had, you know, little ones running around, and I had to qualify that. Okay, the youngest is 19 now, so can no longer say that. But service is literally at the heart of our family. And when I think about the work that I do here each and every day, I think back to Reverend Jesse Jackson. I think back to my father. I think back to my mom. I think back to just all the needs of society, and how we every day can help make sure that people are having opportunities to be their best self, show up, have access to things that are very critical. Transportation does that, and whether it's making sure that there are small, diverse businesses being available, and building generational wealth to do the work that I do and we do as an agency, along with my partner here, Gia, with IDOT, that we are continuing to, you know, build infrastructure, attract businesses to the state of Illinois, really further economic development. Those are just really key and passionate and at the heart of everything that I do from a leadership standpoint. I have 1,200 employees at the agency, a little bit over 1,200, that too are just as very dedicated as I am. And I'm just thankful, Raven, for the opportunity to be here and with the panelists and what you do to make sure that we get a chance to share and have moments to be vulnerable and talk about, what motivates us and why we're here.
Thank you so much. Very, very quickly, CMS is the operational engine powering the state of Illinois. What that really means is we're the state's back office. And so with the exception of the Tollway, we have less because they are quasi, but they're still team administration. We support HR, enterprise fleet, enterprise procurement, enterprise property management. Basically, we do all the things that no other agency does so that they can do their mission. And I'm going to say something about each of these women and how we kind of intertwine that none of them probably know. So about 3 years ago in February, or in January, I get appointed to be director of this agency. I don't know why I took the job, but it's my favorite now, so everything was in the divine order. But within a week, I get a message that then Secretary Grace Hull wants to meet with you. I said, oh gosh. I said, what is the CMS doing? So I get prepared. I said, I call everybody. I'm like, okay, what are they going to talk about? Because the woman wants to meet with me, and I'm sure she wants to complain. And so I got to have an answer, and I don't even know where all the bathrooms are. What's happening? And so the very first meeting I had with a colleague was with Grace Hull. And so she comes to my office. I did not go to her office. So I want you to pick up on all the things that I'm saying. She comes to my office and we sit at my table and she tells me a little bit about herself. So, but I'm ready. I'm like, okay, because usually I'm very personable, but I'm like, it's DHS. They got 18,000 employees and something's going wrong. Okay. And at that moment, the hiring timeline was 149 days. It's 93 today. But yeah, you can clap for that. But then Secretary Hull said, no, I want to know about you. We just talk for 30 minutes and we figure out where we interconnect. And now look, she had a list, y'all. The list did come, but I do believe in that moment. It was, hello, this is a big gig. I'm here. How are you? Let's get to know each other as humans and we'll go to the work. And what I took from that is now every secretary or agency head that joins, I give them about 2 months. I reach out and I ask, would you like to meet? Because you need to come to CMS for something. But I did that because Grace Hull, she was the very first person. I didn't know what was going on. So I thank you for that. A couple of years ago, when she was first assistant deputy governor, I asked Secretary Ramos to sit on a panel. We sit in this room and she was in this seat and she said, it is our goal to be the GOAT of state government. When we think about the greatest of all time, we're sitting in Chicago, a couple miles from the United Center. I'm Team MJ, okay, that's the greatest of all time. We think about it in sports and competition. I am a competitor. And when she said the GOAT of state government, I said, oh, I think my liver quit. Because we don't often think about this work in that way, but if somebody has that sort of laser focus, that sort of vision to say, I want to be the GOAT of this thing, well, I think you got to at least get close, if not be it. And Secretary Biagi, I give her 2 months. I said, hey, would you like to meet? And she's like, yeah, I don't know what's going on here, all the things. And that ended up being a series of meetings over time that included other staff where we just, hey, here are some things to think about as you make this thing fit for your leadership style and also the huge mission before you. And when I tell you, she and I know when I see her name, she'll text me and be like, hey, got a minute? It's amazing, but that started from Grace Hull saying, hey, how are you? And so I know to do that. And I've known Director Rouse just in various settings socially, but she always comes up to me and gives me with a big smile, how you doing? Is everything okay? It's good. It gives me one of those warm hugs that lets you know, like, it's all right, even if I'm having a bad day. And so those are the ways that I hope you picked up something from each of those interactions, that you have to always be a person who will make the call, but also answer the call, because you don't know what that hug does. You don't know what that one meeting will lead to. 3 years in, I'm doing it every single time somebody joins the state. So I'll be quiet now. No more model paneling anymore. I'm gonna be a true panelist. I'm gonna jump right in because I want to make sure we get the main things out the way. Each of you leads or helps lead large, complex systems that touch millions of Illinoisans. What are your biggest priorities or initiatives you're focused on now? Not everybody has to answer. I know I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I know Deputy Governor Grace Hogue has something to say there.
Well, so you are the loveliest, most powerful moderator. Thank you so much for that. And I think, you know what, the one of the main things that I remember from that first meeting was Christian. And so every time I see you, I actually think about how he's doing. So I hope he's doing well. Oh my gosh, where to even start? So my biggest priority, which is maybe more of the humdrum one, is supporting the agency directors that are in our portfolio. Secretary Dulce, Director Vora, Director Whitehorn, et cetera, Director Bennett, and all of their leadership. It is my job to support them, to make sure that they are leading in the way that they can do their best, that they have the instruments, the resources to execute on their mission. And doing that in partnership. And then, of course, pursuing the priorities that are important to the governor as well, of which there are many within the health and human services ecosystem. But in terms of the defensive posture that we're in, of course, there is a lot happening on the federal government landscape that is very much squarely impacting health and human services. One of the biggest priorities and biggest challenges that we're dealing with right now is implementing HR 1, House Resolution 1, which dramatically, seismically changes the two main public benefit programs that has been historically available to people in Illinois and all across the country, and that is the Medicaid program, and that is the SNAP program. And so if you think about equity, you think about these programs that are there to support individuals who do not have health insurance and people who face hunger on a daily basis. And these have been two of the primary tools to meet those needs, and those are being upended in very dramatic ways. So working really closely with DHS, as well as HFS and CMS, all the letters, and DO-IT, to make sure that we are mitigating the number of people who fall off those programs. I want to be clear, the design of this bill is to have people fall off these programs. That is the way that they are saving money to put into other buckets of priorities on the federal level, Homeland Security being one and tax cuts being the other. And so we in Illinois, we need to do everything that we can to mitigate people falling off of those programs. So that's number one. Number two is we are working really closely with the Department of Human Rights. We launched the Illinois Accountability Commission that the governor signed into executive order in October of last month to build accountability mechanisms and recommendations related to the actions of the federal government during Operation Midway Blitz in Illinois. So really want to thank the leadership of the Department of Human Rights as well as the chair of the commission. You know, we are running defense all of the time, I would say, on a whole host of federal actions, from childcare to grant cuts that are done overnight to very small language changes that we work with the Office of Equity and our geolegal office that are trying to really impact what we're doing on a daily basis. But on the opportunity side, and then I'll stop talking, there's so many amazing things that we are able to accomplish every day because we are running defense and offense, and we have dreams and our goals of making Illinois better and stronger. Is I want to lift up the medical debt program. That was a priority of the governor. Literally, when I walked into the door into the governor's office in October of 2023, he said, I want you to figure out how we can alleviate medical debt for people in Illinois. We have eliminated over $1 billion of medical debt for people in Illinois who have been carrying this burden on their shoulders because they had some sort of catastrophic illness, and they can actually live their lives without carrying this around. And that is because the governor made it a priority, and priorities are important, but if you can't implement them, they are just ideas on a shelf, and our administration has been able to do that.
I think you got something going on. A little bit.
Yes, there's just quite a few things going on. So I'm just a year in, or a year and a couple of days, I think. I started last year, and the initial priority, at least for me, was to really start to understand the organization and the state and the priorities, and what have we been doing as an organization? How can we move forward? What are some of the core values that are underpinning the work, or do we need to reshape them into new things? And I spent in the first 6 weeks, I've been in every corner of our state. You should know we have we carved the state up into 9 districts, plus 2 more offices, one in Chicago and one in Springfield. And so the goal was to start get to know the state, starting down in Carbondale and working the way back up north. 'Cause I live in Chicago, and so I ran Chicago's DOT, so I know a little bit about this market. But it was really trying to make sure that I had a good understanding. Like, that was priority 1, and it was just incredible getting to know the places and the people, and really starting to form ideas about what we're great at, what we're not so good at, what we wish we'd fixed 10 years ago that we're living with today, and then figuring out how we move forward. And I used to say, people say, "How's it going?" And I said, you know that Johnny Cash song, "I've been everywhere, man." Sort of felt like that. I'm like, I've been everywhere, Carbondale, Effingham, Paris, I could drill it off. And then it became on the road again. So that was like the next song. I'm not all country. Anyhow, but part and parcel of that was sort of starting to distill, right? What is the story? What is the story of IDOT historically, and where do we need to go, right? I mentioned that rebuild program, that $50 billion is a 6-year program to spend. And so the challenge is, as an organization, if it's the case that you have scaled up in such a way that essentially we had a singularity in front of us, that you take a chart, right? Got dollars here, got year 2000, these are years here, here's today, here's 2019. And this was our construction program, bumping along. And in 2019, it went like that. Like, that's what the chart looks like. In terms of our capacity, we have stayed flat, right? And that's the challenge. How do you grow your capacity? It's hiring, but it's also technology. It's also, how do we think differently about what we're doing? I have so many processes where it's like 115 steps. Could you make it 16? We did that with our hiring process, thanks to the help with CMS. We have more work to do. But it's starting to flag, okay, how do we live up to the moment that we're in and deliver on products people have been waiting for decades? Like, I'm not kidding, decades. People are waiting for things, right? And so it's a lot to collect. The question is, how do you create some scaffolding for making those kinds of changes that are indexed to, vision, mission, goals, strategies, tactics, and metrics? And so one of the things, when I walked in that door in January, one of the things that was already underway was a blue ribbon commission on transportation. And it had been taking a couple years to get up and running. It had folks from industry and advocacy and legislators and all of that. And I walked in the door in January, and they're like, "Hey, you have this blue ribbon commission." I'm like, "What's the blue ribbon commission?" "Oh, well, they can look at everything under IDOT, everything under the hood." And so we spent the last year owning that, not saying, "Oh, now I've got a whole committee that's going to look at us and tell us what our problems are," but say, "Come on in. This is the moment. Let's unpack. Let's take all of this really good energy about making change, put it on some scaffolding, and create a strategic plan in order to move forward." And so that's been a huge priority this past year. We just published the report about a month ago. It is 5 objectives around project delivery, workforce, governance, equity, sustainability, but also has 27 recommendations, which sounds like a lot until you see the 113 sub-recommendations. But the priority now is to say, it's not just a book on a shelf. It's not something we're just going to file away and say, "Okay, great," and then everyone will yell at us when we didn't get done. We're turning it into what I'm calling a blueprint. And part of the challenge is, when you do have these reports, how do you engage a community, in this case, the agency, in having a say and a stake in the changes that we need to make together? And so we're doing a transformative process now to engage the whole organization and saying, okay, recommendation 109. Let's talk about this. Let's create some working groups of people who've never talked to each other in our own agency to work together towards solving this. Set the benchmark. Let's roll toward it. Let's be as transparent as possible. So it's a massive undertaking, but it's long overdue. It's a huge chance to reset, make sure we're getting shovels in the ground, but also delivering on the grants and the policies and all the support that we need to deliver across the state. So that's been the priority, and it's an incredible opportunity to have an agency-wide conversation. When do you get to do that? You know, we have about 5,000 people across the state, and it's rare to say, okay, we're actually going to say out loud all these things maybe we've been talking about, and we're going to make the change, set the course, and live by it. So that's what's going on at IDOT.
From an Illinois Tollway perspective, first I'd like to
Besides
say.
raising the toll
Okay.
prices.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about that. Because the reality is, we are a toll system. And we have no federal funding. So in order to fund our operations, we need to collect a toll. So what's important to us, we are literally on the heels of our next long-term capital program. And what's exciting about leading up to this is the outreach and the collaboration and the communication that we've had over several months, just understanding from a user standpoint, from a community standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a small business owner standpoint, what are some of your priorities and how do you view infrastructure investment and economic development? And as highlighted, being a toll system, that means it's about your customer experience because you have an option. But we want to make sure that you see the value of being on our toll system, whether it's through safety and maintenance, whether it's through customer service. It's how we collaborate with the 12 counties that we surrounded, which is 8.4 million, residents practically. So as an agency, we have a number of stakeholders that from a customer experience standpoint, we need to make sure you see and experience the value of actually paying that toll. But what was also really important about all of our activity leading to just the upcoming announcement of our program is how do we integrate and how do we collaborate and advance priorities of our other transit partners, working, hand in hand with IDOT as well, to make sure, again, as a traveling patron across this state, honestly, do you really always realize whether or not you're on IDOT road or a tollway road? So it's really important the integration is there and that we are leveraging each other's experiences and opportunity to make sure that we're being efficient and delivering infrastructure investments across this state. And we have some great partners. There's not a transportation partner across this state that I can't or we can't pick up the phone to address any issue that we have and bring more importantly, a solution that will, drive the efficiencies that we need across the state to make sure that we are modernizing the system, that we are expanding economic opportunities. So as an agency, from a tolling perspective, very proud of, what we do. Yes, you pay a toll, but trust me, it's through our lens to make sure you understand the value of why you pay that toll.
We appreciate the new little sticker. It's slick. I'm not gonna lie. And the app is all right. So I give you that.
See, we're bringing a lot of technology into the space.
Absolutely.
So we're building an agency. And
Building a plane as you're flying it.
building a plane while we're flying it, and it's both. We've described it both as a startup in state government, which is hard because there are lots of rules, as you know, in state government. But it's also a merger, right, of programs from DHS, from DCFS, and the State Board of Education, and some of the work that happened in the governor's office prior. And so I think part of our priorities, first and foremost, is seamless transition of services from 3 agencies so families and providers do not see any change or feel any bureaucracy. Our long-term, though, vision is how do we make sure, to your point, right, we know that operational infrastructure and technology infrastructure is not what gets talked about all the time by external partners who are advancing policy in health and human services or education. And it is where we can drive equity. It is with really important, helpful data systems, really strong operational infrastructure that we're able to understand where is the state chronically not supporting children, our youngest children. Where are we not supporting providers, which is a predominantly women of color business and small business throughout the state? How do we drive better use the resources that we have for efficiency and equity? And so we're trying to stand up our HR team and stand up our legal team and stand up our fiscal team. Appreciate all of DHS's support there, and figure out, to your point, like every time I ask, is there a way to do this better? Is there a way to do this faster? Is there a way to do this that drives more equity around every corner, which means lots of phone calls every 3 weeks. We're on a conversation with CMS, thank you for coming. Deputy Governor Ho, Deputy Governor Torres, FADG Amanda Elliott. We have GOMB and Secretary Regal, and every of our
The
transportation.
goats of state government.
The goats of state government. You're welcome. Send you the calendar. But because the systems are people, right? And it is both the delight to be able to connect with people, and it's sometimes the hardest thing, right? To figure out how you're balancing those relationships in a moment where everybody is both playing defense and we're all driving to the same thing, but we have different visions. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you so much. I want to be mindful of time, so I'm going to rapid fire. See, Cynthia, she's like, she's giving me a hands up. All right, you didn't even have to tell me. I didn't see the text. No, I want to rapid fire a few questions, but I want to make sure we get to some of the core items as it is Women's History Month. So we chose the folks that we chose very specifically. You have two women who are in leading male-dominated fields, like hard stop. They are probably, they are unicorns in the country. I don't have to ask them, I know. And then we have the other two unicorns who are unicorns in leadership. While these are typically their fields, it is woman dominated, but it's usually at the service level and not at management. So I want you to understand there's some brilliance with even how we juxtapose this. Representation absolutely matters. So how do all your various identities inform how you lead and what you do? Go ahead. You're looking at me. Go ahead, Secretary.
I'll go. I think I show up as a mom, as a sister, as someone who comes from a big family and is juggling things. And, I have Marilyn Vasquez and Sydney Ellison, both on my team. We have a very strong women-led team at the agency, really making sure that we're trying to be honest, that we can make space to have direct conversations. We are in a, I think 8-week crunch where I was talking to folks today about how we just have to name, we're all very stressed. We're in the office from 7 to 7. We're trying to balance the things and pull off this major initiative, and we're going to mess up. And it's going to be okay. And we're going to have to figure out how to recover and repair when we are in those stressed moments, when we are not showing up as our best selves. So that way we can continue to, do the work long term. I think that's how.
Thank you for saying that. I always tell Team CMS, we are safe to fail forward here. And so many times we don't try because we're afraid to fail, but we're going to mess up. We acknowledge it. Yeah. It's how we recover, and that you really do have to create that safety. That is the underscore actually of innovation and actually being a GOAT. Anybody else want to answer that question?
I think it's important as a leader, especially a female leader in a male-dominated environment, to acknowledge the other women that are part of your team and to invite them into the spaces that you are in, and also create a culture where it's open door, so that people within all levels of your organization have a space to express their thoughts and ideas on how to move the business, because they do. In the agencies, there are a lot of seasoned or individuals that have been within the agencies for a long time, and they actually, they do have thoughts and opportunities to advance the organization in ways that, sometimes maybe they haven't been tapped to basically express what those initiatives and ideas are to move things forward. And I think it's important to, create those safe spaces. One of the questions I know was asked, well, when did you, kind of note that you had a seat at the table? And I would say for me personally, it became the moment where I stopped needing to prove that I needed to be inside the role. And in the beginning, I felt as if I spent a lot of time proving that I needed to be in a space that I already was in. So once I realized that, it became just really honing in on the confidence to lead not only just the organization or a team, and recognize that, yes, I don't have all the answers, but then that's why I have a strong team, and we together can, come up with the best solution to move an idea forward. And sometimes, again, those best decisions don't come from the top leadership team. They come throughout, your organization. And most recently, the end of the month, we did a women's photo shoot at the agency. And when I tell you the energy that was created in the room, and it was the first time we ever did it, and I want to to thank my comms team for actually bringing the idea forward. But I will tell you that that was such a great feeling to have all of us in the room. And when I look at the pictures and I saw individuals that sometimes they were a little shy, didn't always want to be in front of the camera, but in those moments, we got a chance to connect with each other in ways that we may not have had it been, behind a desk. And so it's when we create these moments or curate these moments in our organization that allow, women to express themselves or have a seat at the table. And my last story is when I first, I'll call it getting my seat at the board table, I was in a position and another female board leader said to me, Cassaundra, welcome to the board table. And I really appreciated that because in a way it was another female representative in the room that basically opened the door to say, come on in, you can depend on me, you can lean on me. And if you got questions, you can ask me. And so I think it's really important as leaders, as female leaders, that you need to have those cheerleaders in your background because some days, are really hard. I mean, we do a lot of work. We work in excess of 10 hours a day. And so sometimes you need to have that cheerleader. You need to have that sponsor. You need to also have that person that will critique you as well as a part of your circle of success.
So I feel really lucky because because the work that I have done and devoted my career to actually fits who I am. Starting my career really working in earnest at the Chinese American Service League in Chinatown and then Chinese Mutual Aid in Uptown. I feel really privileged because I've been able to, throughout my entire career, outside of working at KFC in high school, that I've been able to choose what I do for a vocation. And I thank my lucky stars every day that I'm in a position to choose what I do because that is so important to me. And that I get to do work that makes a positive impact on communities. And so, similar to Secretary Ramos, like I'm so many things and I am able to bring a lot of that to my work, but I also want to be real. I know that not everybody is able to do that in their roles. And that is something that we need to, through the course of my career, I think, especially in the early career, well, I can't really show this piece, or I don't think that they would really want to know that this is what I think about that. And I do recognize that we work in a hierarchical environment and where actually the higher you go, the more you can potentially live out who you are. So I think it's important to name that. I want to piggyback on something that was talked about earlier, and I've really been sitting with this question, Director Raven, which is when did I know that I belonged at the table? And my initial answer was, I'll let you know when that happens. But then my second answer was sometimes it ebbs and flows, actually. There can be moments where I'm like, okay, I got this. I deserve to be deputy governor. And then there are other times like, what in the world am I doing here? But I think the real answer is the spirit of this panel, which is the real answer is when I feel most belonged, I feel like a sense of belong. I don't know what the correct grammar is, but you know what I'm saying, is when people invite me in and affirm what I'm doing and envelop me into their work and say, hey, you're doing a good job. Thank you for doing that. Whether it's people who work for me, people who I work alongside, or if it's the governor. And so I think I feel like that is something that we should continue to lift up in each other and to say, because belonging comes from people making you feel like you belong. It is a two-way transaction. And so I think I want to be more intentional about having people understand that they belong, and I have a role to play in that as well.
Yeah, I love that. It makes me, I think about the concept of radical hospitality, right? The idea that you can welcome everyone. And there's probably a stance to take on radical belonging, right? Like, how could you live that out? So I love the provocation there. For me, let's see, there's this seminal moment in my parents' lives where, let's see, I was a second kid. I have an older brother, a younger sister. When I came around, there was an actual conversation about whether I was going to do ballet or play ice hockey. And it was between my dad and my mom. My older brother played ice hockey. There was no girls team, right? So he was going to play on the boys team. That's fine. My brother was shorter and smaller, so I was going to be awesome because I was taller, everything. And he still feels that. And so I do. He stands on his tiptoes when we take pictures. I love you, Damien. And so there was this moment, and there was a real conversation where my mom really wanted me to go into ballet, and she was a dancer and all kinds of things. And my dad, who played other kinds of sports, but saw what it had done for my brother. And in that, the argument ended up with my dad saying, you know, I want her to be a modern woman, whatever that meant in the 70s. But he's like, I want her to go down this path and try these things and be in these spaces. And so for once, he won the argument. And so I started playing ice hockey from the age of 3. I was the only girl forever through high school. And, you know, for me, that's idea of like, do you belong? I was just in the room and I stayed in the room. Right. And, you know, except when we played in Canada, I was in the same locker room as the guys. These guys became my brothers over time as we moved up. And I never felt like I didn't belong, except when the other team would go after me because they'd see the ponytail. And my team, you know, we'd all get into fist fights because that's hockey. But it was sort of, it's funny because I think hard about that question. When did I feel like I belong? And it's not. It's such a privileged statement to say, like, I always have felt like I should be there, you know, why can't I be at that table? And that's a privilege to be able to feel that way. And so there were some moments, you know, and in terms of like the cultural self that you bring forward, you know, I'm mostly Italian, but I'm a good chunk Filipino. That's something that, you know, is not maybe obvious. Now you're like, oh yeah, maybe she's, yeah,
Absolutely.
right.
Hold on, we need to make sure that we document that.
I'm too tall. I'm just like,
for our
she's too
annual
tall.
report.
Yeah, I know. So, but you know, it's a reminder that, you know, the people around you are carrying all kinds of identities. They're carrying all kinds of sort of being attuned to the issues that they might recognize that you won't, right? And so I try to strive for that notion of kind of a belonging and bring people to the table and creating space. I think all of that is good. But the notion of invitation, I think that was brought up earlier, is really key, right? It's important not only to get people to the table, but to also give them agency, right? They say if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We know that much, but you might sit at the table and not eat, right? And so we have to think about across that continuum of how we work together with people on issues. Like I always think of the community engagement continuum. It's old, it's not mine, where when you're working with communities, you have an inform on one side, we're just telling you what's going to happen. And that there's good to be honest in that way. And on the other side, there's empower, where we're going to hand over decisions and enable you to make those decisions, and engagements and a couple other things in between. And so I try to think about that when trying to be strategic about that notion of belonging and invitation. That am I transferring power? Can I give away decisions, right? Are there moments where I just need to be honest, like we're going to do this way, blah, blah, blah. And let's just be clear about it. But to the extent that you can hand off decision-making to others, and in that act, make sure that others who are typically not at the table or eating at the table are doing so, it makes all the difference. I did a lot of working with communities all over the country and the world, and on civic projects both in the private sector and other parts of my life. And we always talk about, you know, this idea of the tent, right? And if you plan for people in the center, you know, people who are relatively aligned or similar in some way, and you put the tent up, you can put a pole in the middle, and you can get folks who are, you know, in that sort of moderate middle group. But if you put the tent up by its outside, by the margins, if you plan for the margins, the whole tent goes up and a lot more people are inside it. So I try to think about that when we're making decisions or who's at the table, to say who's not here, who should be, who's marginalized from this conversation, that I have some power to bring them in the room. And then also to say, okay, what can I give to you in terms of some agency? And I found that thinking that way, you don't always get it right, but at least having that framework can make all the difference.
So Secretary Jean, I feel very close to you because I'm a hockey mom.
Cowbell.
Yeah,
Of course, we're coming up on
Sticky
time,
gear.
and it's just now getting good. But what I heard here is that if you're at the table, you need to make sure somebody else is at the table. And if not, you always bring their voice, their perspectives to make sure that is elevated. And something that I think every woman up here would agree, we are in positions of privilege at this point in our careers because we can really be ourselves. But the best thing you can do for somebody else is be your best you, because I empower, when I'm me, when I wear Nefertiti around my neck every single day, even when I'm interviewing for the biggest job of my life to that point, or whether or not I'm talking to the guy who's emptying our garbage and he wants to know what health plan should I choose because Health Alliance left the market, that allows my staff to be them. And then they can be comfortable to just go ahead and be amazing. Rapid fire, what's your superpower?
I would say my superpower is collaboration and bringing people together. My superpower.
Can I go last?
Sway.
I was.
Not a healthy mom way, but we'll let
Lost
it
2 minutes
slide.
thinking about this.
I'm gonna say it's a combination of tenacity, like this fierce focus on I gotta get this done, and humility, which is I know I'm gonna screw up and I just gotta come at it like someone needs to tell me.
I'm very good at talking. So public speaking is a bit of a superpower, but also in a weird way, my impatience is a superpower. I feel a sense of urgency all the time about everything. And sometimes that can be negative, but that is something that is a fire I don't put out.
So I became a manager at a very young age, and one of the lessons that I learned that I think turns it into a superpower was the more power that I had, the more that I had to try to accommodate and bring out the strengths of the people who report to me. So there was this feeling of like I had to treat everybody equally because that's the fair thing to do as a manager. But then what one of my colleagues said to me when I was at Chinese Mutual Aid, no, you don't treat us the same. You need to give us what we need in order to be good. And so I've tried to carry that forward as a leader.
That's equity.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
See what you need.
Y'all didn't ask, but I'm gonna say one of my superpowers, it's love.
Aw.
Love is always the assignment, even when I don't
Wait a
like
minute,
to.
I
No. Well, the other one is an amazing ability with pop culture. Test me, I probably got you. But no, but I didn't realize that until about 6 months ago. So it's a late understanding of what that is, because when I really put it all together, the thread of it is love. I might not always like people, because I usually don't like people, but I guarantee you I love you. And in that love for self, I'm able to love you in a very deep way, and I hope it shows, except when I'm not very happy. But okay, we got about 2 minutes, and I have probably 30 more questions to ask, and you all answered one of the questions I did not ask, so we know it was a good question. I'll make sure I ask it again next year. This is a two-parter. Please be succinct. Number one, I always want to know what's something you wish you had learned earlier. And two, there are several leaders, burgeoning leaders in this audience and listening virtually. What is the single piece of advice you would give them? So what do you wish you had learned earlier, and what piece of advice would you give these burgeoning women leaders?
I'll start off. You don't have to have all the right answers in the moment, and that you should take the time to think. That you also can't be afraid of making a mistake. You learn in those moments. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, because I always say that's where really the growth happens. I would also say, to the back end of your question, it's really important as women that we are inspiring and bringing in the next generation. That's really key. I think by the fact that you see the women here in those leadership positions, there are other women that I know that are out there that are like, you know what, I can do this. And so I think, just organically, we are opening doors, to other women being in the spaces that we are in, but then more importantly, encouraging the next generation so that they understand the importance of them being involved in this work too. And confidence, always step with confidence. And then next and lastly, you got to have the grit. I mean, you know what? It takes a lot to be in these roles, and it's going to require some perseverance. It's going to not at all times are you going to get it right, but recognize that again, even in those decisions where you made the best decision you could in that moment, don't be afraid to say, you know what? I made a mistake, and let's go back to the line and let's reconsider and understand how to now move this forward in a different direction.
Okay. Be kind, be curious, be hardworking, and be optimistic.
Similar, I was like, be yourself, ask the question, have thick skin. And I think that comes with being brave. I wish I would have known earlier to just not be so scared as I was getting into these bigger leadership tables and just be myself all the time. It will help you go further faster.
Mentorship does not have to be formal. That's something that I walked around for you. I'm like, I don't have any mentors. Who am I mentored? I need a formal meeting, blah, 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 blah. And then when I grew up a little bit, I was like, oh, you have mentors all around you, and they take all kinds of different forms. And so open your mind up to what mentorship could look like, because it makes all the difference. And then make time, schedule time for the things that give you joy. I have to schedule it. Personally, I do, because you won't get to it, or you'll diminish it, dilute it. For me, that's, I love athletic adventures, right? And so I want to climb that mountain. Okay, fine. So I'm going to put it on the calendar, work my way toward it. And that allows me to not be the secretary of IDOT for a minute and get immersed in something that I get great joy out of. I even look at like a maniac every, I didn't invent this either. Every week of the past year, instead of a resolution, you may have heard this, look at every single week, and I look for the people, activities, and events that gave me joy, and the people, activities, events that did not. And you make a list. And the important part is the joy side, where you say, wow, there's a pattern. I didn't know that every time I go to coffee with this person I only see once in a while, I love it. And they're hilarious. And we have such a great time. So you flag those patterns, then you schedule it immediately. January 2nd, you schedule all the joyful things throughout the year. Then it's booked. Then you can relax because you know you'll get to it. So those would be pieces of advice.
I have one other quick point, because I know we're right on the top of the hour, but I think as women on this panel, and I know we're all thinking this, but self-care. I think it's so important. Again, we are in heavy roles, and we do have to take time to, really look at our own self-care, as we are in these positions. And I think that also is something that we can also show those that are looking at us in this role, that we do take time to take care of ourselves.
Y'all hit on some of the questions that I didn't get to. One thing I want to say about mentorship we eschew our peer mentors. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I usually learn more from the person that I'm shoulder to shoulder with than anybody who is much further than where I am. I have 2 of my peer mentors in the room right now, and I have several in my life. And so I want you all to recognize you can learn just about anything from anybody. And I think what Deputy Governor Grace Hull said, those be kind, courteous, whatever you learned in kindergarten still applies. It don't change no matter what. And Audre Lorde, I'm going to paraphrase a bit. Audre Lorde said, self-care is not self-indulgence. It's actually an act of revolution. So whether or not you have to schedule it or you have to just know that every week I'm going to do something, it is an act of revolution, and we are revolutionaries every single day in our own way. The fact that we sit here and we are walking through this world to get to whatever we had to get here, we are revolutionaries. We all are. Don't ever forget that. I know I'm past time on the WebEx. We're going to blame Secretary Biagi. Yeah, y'all know what it is. I thank you all for joining the 2026 Women's History Month panel. Please thank our panelists. Amazing. Oh, thank you. It is. I do appreciate it. It is one of my, I don't really care what the bosses think about me. I care what my colleagues think about me. And every time I pick up the phone, they answer. And so I'm very grateful for that. That really is kind of my ethos. The bosses they'll think what they think, but my colleagues, I'll be able to talk to them forever. So that's the goal. Thank you all. Thank you for joining. Somebody great will post it. Thanks, Zach from Do It. And I want to also acknowledge Noreen Hashim Jawani, our senior policy advisor. I'm sure she's on virtually somewhere. Thank you all.
All right. We have one question in particular online and a comment. I'll do the question first in case she's still online as people are starting to drop off. We had 145 guests join us online. And one of the questions from Claudia Gomez asks, akin to the governor's office offering the GOLD program, do we have a mentorship program for women in state employment?
Well, it's somebody trying to give me some more work, but I think the question was, the GOAL program has a mentorship program. Is there a mentorship program for women in state leadership? I'm gonna look at Deputy Governor Grace Ho.
I don't think there is one right now.
Okay, so I guess that maybe on
We can work on it.
our
This is the
how you
committee.
do it.
This is the planning committee here,
Yeah.
right here. Yeah,
Well, here's what I would say to that. It doesn't have to be formal.
right. That's
If
right.
you see somebody that moves kind of how you want to move, you should just reach out to them. I send people, hey, how are you? My name is Raven. I'm Raven. How are you? I'd like to get to know you. But we heard you.
And there are a lot of thank yous, rave reviews in the comments. This one kind of sums up it all. It says, thank you for such an inspiring and empowering discussion in recognition of Women's History Month. The reflections shared today on leadership service and strengthening systems within Illinois state government were both meaningful and motivating. It is truly encouraging to see so many accomplished women leading with purpose and sharing more sustainable and equitable futures for our state. Conversations like this remind us of the importance of supporting one another, lifting as we climb, and continuing to open doors for the next generation of women in public service. Thank you again for your leadership and for creating space for such an impactful dialogue. Wow.
That's amazing. Have you stopped recording? Okay. I did promise that if there are questions in the room, we would